Right. Wonderful. Wow, this turnout is so great. It again makes me so happy. 3 o'clock on a Thursday. Shout out to you all. And after a meeting that just ended. So thank you. I am Britt, she, they pronouns, and welcome to our Berkeley IT DEIB Speaker Series. Actually, this will be our last speaker until the fall. We'll take a little break in the summer and roll out the BIT Culture Champs. That's just a plug to say if you want to apply for the Culture Champions, you should. And so, yeah, we will take a little break, but I want to just kind of give a quick shout out to the People, Performance, and Culture team who were really supportive as I was trying to get this series started. So thank you all. And then huge thank you to Berkeley IT community. Really, I've had a wonderful first year here. So thank you. And thanks for showing up today. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge the land that we are on. Some of us are zooming in from different spaces and different places. And so I love to share this link so you can identify whose land you are on. And I just want to say, the reading of a land acknowledgement is a traditional custom that dates back centuries in many Native nations and communities. Today, land acknowledgements are used by Native peoples and non-Native peoples to recognize Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the land on which we now live. UC Berkeley sits on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. As members of the Berkeley community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we stand, but also we recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the Berkeley and broader Bay Area communities today. In addition, actually, to our land acknowledgement today, I just want to also share another link. All the links. Okay. And this is a link for the Sogorea Land Trust. And that is a group of urban Indigenous women that are based here in the Bay Area. And they essentially give land back, right? They facilitate the return of Indigenous land to Indigenous people. So support of that land tax is crucial to their work. It's just another way to give back and kind of add on to that land acknowledgement that we also read. Okay, now I'd like to briefly introduce our speaker today, Wes Chernin Kinrose, using he, him pronouns. Wes is joining us from, I would normally say sunny Southern California, but I'm pretty sure it's been gray for a few months. So from gloomy Southern California, he is with us today. He is an award-winning transgender speaker, consultant, educator, and speech language pathologist. He partners with schools and healthcare clinics and communities in order to support queer and trans belonging. As a trans SLP who is hard of hearing, Wes deeply and uniquely understands the profound impact that communication and language have on people and organizations. His own lived experiences in conjunction with his learning and listening to other queer voices and the voices of BIPOC, disabled, neurodivergent, and other marginalized groups help inform his work and fuel his commitment to placing quality of life at the center of everything he does. Welcome, Wes. It's so lovely to have you. And I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you. Take it from here.
Thank you so much, Britt. It's amazing to be here. Thank you all for joining. I'm just going to go ahead and get my screen shared and make sure that I can see y'all. And there we go. I think we're ready. Okay. What a lovely introduction. Truly also great music to set the tone. I'm really, really happy to be here with you all and to be in conversation with you today about gender diversity and the language we use. So let's just hop right in. Britt just introduced me, but to kind of echo what they said, I'm Wes, my pronouns are he, him. I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to share my positionality as a way for you to get to know me better and as just a way for me to name and acknowledge the various lenses through which I experience the world. So First and foremost, why I'm here today is that I am transgender and I am queer, and I am a DEI consultant on queer and trans belonging. I am also a speech, language, and communication therapist. I'm white, I'm Jewish, I'm hard of hearing. I wear hearing aids, which were life-changing for me, helped a lot. I started wearing them about 6 years ago. I grew up in middle-class America, Southern California, actually. English is my first and really only language. I recently moved back to Southern California from living in Portland, Oregon for 12 years. And before that, I was living in the Bay Area for about 6. I am recently a husband, been a partner for a while, also a dog dad. This is a photo from our wedding just a couple months ago. And I am often perceived as this white, straight, cisgender man, even though I am not straight and I am not cisgender, but all of those intersections influence the way I'm treated in the world. I also put a couple places where you can find me and locate me. And let's hop right in. So here's just a really quick snapshot of how we're going to spend the next hour together. After this little intro, I'm going to spend some time laying a foundation for us to better understand gender diversity. Then we're going to get to explore gender alignment and gender joy. What is that? What does it feel like? And then we'll look at some language practices that support belonging. I'll have a quick call to action for you, and then I'll make sure to have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. So we're starting by laying this foundation to understand gender diversity. And this is not going to be comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, but I really just want to make it clear that I welcome all levels of knowing or not knowing on this topic. All of that is safe to explore in this space. I encourage you to write your questions down. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to get to them at the end. And if not, I have a place for you to share them with me in a form that I can look at later and respond to you. So let's really start with getting explicit about what gender diversity is. People use this term in a multitude of ways. Some people use gender diversity to describe having a somewhat equal ratio of men and women. Some people use gender diversity to describe transgender and non-binary people, or anyone who falls outside of the binary experience of gender. But I use the term gender diversity to mean all of the different and diverse genders that people experience. So it encompasses everyone and acknowledges that gender in and of itself is naturally diverse. That means that we, all of us here together, we make up gender diversity, not just queer and trans folks. Now, we were all probably taught that gender is something very matter of fact that is determined essentially by our genitals at birth, and that's really just that. And for some people, it really is just that, like that works for them. There is this congruence between the gender that they were assigned at birth and their internal experience of gender. But for other people, like me, for example, the sex and gender that I was assigned at birth does not match with who I know myself to be. This is where gender identity comes into the picture. Our gender identity is our deep knowing and internal sense of our own gender. So woman, man, both, neither, or another gender entirely. Gender identity is not something that we can see. It's not something we can see. It is not dictated by our bodies. It's just an internal knowing of who we are. So we've been taught that we can look at someone and know what their gender is, but when we really examine gender diversity and see it more fully, we recognize that we actually cannot reliably just look at someone or just hear someone's voice and always accurately identify their gender. I want to give you some examples of different gender identities. We have woman, man, non-binary, agender, demi-boy, demi-girl, gender fluid, gender queer. There are so many more. But most of us grew up only knowing about the gender binary, woman and man. The gender binary is this idea that there are only two genders and that each person is either one or the other, and that it has to be the one that you were born with and like assigned at birth. The gender binary also believes that every person's gender should be in congruence with traditional constructs of feminine and masculine. So the gender binary really does not acknowledge or value gender diversity. It only acknowledges two of the multitude of genders that real people experience. But the thing is that no two genders are more right or valid or worthy of belonging. So I want to share with you some of the language that we use to categorize gender diversity. One of them is transgender or trans. That's one that I use. This reflects a person whose gender identity, our internal sense of knowing who we are, is different from the gender that we were assigned at birth. So this might be a binary identity like a man or woman, or a non-binary identity. It's some form of gender identity that's different from the gender we were assigned at birth. Whereas non-binary refers to a person whose gender identity is not exclusively woman or man. So non-binary gender identities may encompass both man and woman, neither man nor woman, an expansion of these ideas around binary genders, or something else entirely. Some non-binary people do not relate to any binary gender, while other non-binary folks do relate to one or both binary genders, but just not exclusively. The last one I want to share is cisgender, or cis. A cis person is someone whose gender identity is the same as the gender that they were assigned at birth. So it is really important that cisgender people know that they are cis, and not just know that they are not trans or not non-binary. There is privilege that comes with being cis, and it's not to the fault of the individual cis person, but within the larger system of the way that our society has been set up, cis people hold privilege that trans people do not have access to simply because of their gender. Now, having cis privilege also does not minimize or negate other marginalized or oppressed positions that a cis person may experience. What it does is it acknowledges and helps us see that when it comes to gender, cisgender is at the center with the most power. Systems are built and operate for cis people and with cisgender experiences in mind. So with that said, cis privilege is going to be experienced quite differently based on a person's other intersecting identities. So a disabled cis person is going to have a different reality than a non-disabled cis person. A white cis person is going to experience different levels of privilege than a Black cis person. All of this is true and messy and really worth spending time sitting with. But it's not just our gender identity that is diverse. It's also our gender expression. And what I mean by gender expression is that not only do we have an internal sense of our gender, we also express our gender in certain ways. Gender expression is how we communicate or how we express our gender identity outwardly. These are things like our clothes, makeup, jewelry, our mannerisms, our voice, even our name and pronouns. Gender expression is what we can see, though its interpretation can be subjective and nuanced, because our own feelings of masculinity and femininity and gender nonconformity are not going to necessarily mean the same thing or be perceived in the same way as it is perceived or felt by somebody else. We often think about gender expression in these categories. Masculine, feminine are the most common ways we think about it, but also androgynous, gender nonconforming. These are all ways that we can describe our appearances and our expression, but they don't equal certain genders. Someone can have an entirely masculine gender expression, but not be a man. Someone may look androgynous and be a woman. The gender binary teaches us that all of these things need to match up, and that if we're a boy, we can only wear certain things, we can only like certain things, we can only act in certain ways. But when we really think about it, the teachings of the gender binary are false. They're not true, and they're very restrictive, not just for trans and non-binary folks, but for everybody, for cisgender people too. So I want to share a short video with you by Alok, who is a non-binary, gender non-conforming poet, comedian, and activist. This is called "The Gender Binary Hurts Us All."
There's a multi-century PR campaign to convince the public that gender non-conforming people are dangerous, that we're delinquent, that we're disorderly, that we're fundamentally wrong. And this isn't just about gender non-conforming people, it's about everyone. Everyone's told and made to believe that they'll be punished if they stray away from these stringent ideas of what it means to be a man or woman. What that looks like is women who don't remove their body hair know that they'll be punished and judged. Men who express emotions know that they'll be punished and judged, and so they don't. And so then what ends up happening is that those of us who have the audacity to practice autonomy, to say, I get to exist outside of what your norms of who I should be, we experience the brunt of the violence, and we also experience the brunt of the awareness to teach society that it too is suffering.
So I have some reflections for you all. I came up with two reflection prompts for you that I want to just spend a couple minutes with. It would be amazing if you wanted to contribute your thoughts into the chat. So the first one is this. When I was a child, I learned that blank was for girls and blank was for boys. And of course, there's not only going to be one thing here. Feel free to write more than one, or feel free to just share the first thing that comes to mind. The second prompt I want you to be thinking about is, I felt or I feel in conflict with gender stereotypes because of this thing about me, or because of this thing that I like to do. What is it that comes up for you about these two reflections? All right, I see folks in here. Barbie dolls for girls, toy cars for boys, dolls and trucks. That's, yeah, Barbie's, G.I. Joe's. Housework for girls, fishing for boys. Lots of the same, I'm seeing lots of the same themes in here. Loving this. Dancing for girls, football for boys. Dress up is for girls, building is for boys, pink is for girls, blue is for boys. We have all internalized this messaging. This was taught to us at a very, very, very young age. There's no way that we have, that this thinking hasn't influenced our lens throughout our lifetime. These are so great. I wonder if anyone has any reflections on that second prompt. When do you feel in conflict with gender stereotypes? That one gets a little bit more personal, so it's okay if you want to reflect personally, but if anyone feels like sharing, please do. I see it back to the girls and boys thing, the dresses and pants, submissive, independent. Okay, thank you, Sarah, for sharing a reflection on the second one. You didn't like makeup as a girl, right? So there's this expectation, there's this stereotype, this gender stereotype that all girls should like makeup. Well, clearly that's not true, right? But we internalize that messaging and then there becomes almost shame around not liking it. Maybe liking certain subjects that aren't supposed to be for your gender, being good at a subject that is stereotypical of a different gender. These are so amazing. Thank you for sharing your reflections on these. I really encourage you that if this feels like it's igniting something in you or making you think differently, to come back to these later and have a conversation about it, do some journaling, whatever works for you. Let's move on to exploring gender alignment and joy. So, I mean, really all that trans people are trying to do is be true to ourselves and access gender alignment. For most cisgender people, gender affirming experiences are accessed without effort and often without even realizing it. Gender affirming experiences are the experiences and actions that support and honor a person's gender. So I want to share with you just some of the common gender affirming experiences that most cisgender people have access to without even trying. These are things like being referred to by your name and your pronouns, having access to bathrooms, changing rooms, sports teams that align with your gender and that no one is going to think twice about you being there. No one is going to give you any hassle for being there based on your gender. Having professors, therapists, medical professionals, policymakers, and other people in power who understand your gender and your body. Seeing people like you in media, in books, in curriculum. And work and school environments where your gender identity and gender expression aren't up for debate and are seen as valid and belonging. Having gender affirming experiences often go unnoticed to people whose gender identity and gender expression match up with society's expectations. There is privilege built into the way that our systems and society operate simply for being cisgender. Now, these types of gender affirming experiences, in addition to others, are really vital to our mental health and well-being. And this is true for everyone, not just trans and non-binary people, but it's become obvious because for trans and non-binary folks, when we don't have access to these gender affirming experiences and others, our mental health suffers significantly and disproportionately. And when we do have access, our quality of life is significantly better. So I'm going to share a few statistics with you. And I just want to mention that there is talk of suicide in some of these statistics. So what I'm sharing is from the Trevor Project. They conduct an annual LGBTQ youth mental health survey. And this year, they surveyed more than 28,000 LGBTQ young people ages 13 to 24 across the US. So these are high school and college age young people. And they found that 41% of LGBTQ young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. And that trans, non-binary, and people of color were at higher risk than their white, cis LGBTQ peers. Now, this alarming rate of suicidality is not because we are LGBTQ. It is because of the ways in which we are discriminated against, mistreated, and stigmatized for being LGBTQ. 1 in 3 people who took this survey said that their mental health was very poor due to the anti-LGBTQ policies and legislation that are sweeping the nation right now. And even though we're not seeing so many of these anti-LGBTQ bills in California, it does not mean that California LGBTQ folks are not still being impacted. In fact, 85% of participants in this survey said that they are actively paying attention to media reports about the rights of LGBTQ people. So the messages that we are receiving from our environment impacts our quality of life greatly and really cannot be overlooked. The good news is we have really clear and really consistent research that shows us that gender affirming practices save lives. For example, when transgender and non-binary young people have their pronouns respected by the people in their lives, especially those closest to them, they report lower rates of attempting suicide. And when folks find their school to be an affirming place, there is lower suicidality. So don't overlook the power that access to gender affirming experiences has on people's mental health and overall well-being. When we as LGBTQ+ people feel seen and supported and like we belong, our quality of life is significantly better. And we are then able to be active participants, be contributors in our communities, in our work, in our school, in our social lives. Now, when I think about access to gender affirming experiences and gender alignment, one of the big things that I think about is transition, because transition is one of the ways that trans and non-binary people can access gender alignment. Transition is this process of changing one's gender expression and/or physical characteristics to better align with and affirm one's gender identity. It can be social. There's social transitions like using a new name, using a different set of pronouns, wearing clothes that better align with your gender identity. Maybe it's getting a new haircut that better suits your gender. Maybe it's using a different bathroom than you were using before that aligns more accurately with your gender identity. Those are all social aspects of transition. There are also medical ways to transition. That includes things like hormones and/or surgery. And then there's a legal component. You could have name and sex documentation changes. It's really important to know that every person's transition looks different and that there is not a right or wrong way to transition. Each one of us, each trans person, each non-binary person needs different things to feel affirmed. And we also have access to different resources. But what I really want to highlight about transition is that it is this intentional movement toward oneself. It is celebratory, it is beautiful. It is a tool to help people have access to their full potential, to be able to show up more in academics, in their work, to relieve cognitive load, and to access more joy. And that's what I want to talk about next. Joy, gender joy, okay? Gender joy, sometimes referred to as gender euphoria, is this deep satisfaction, this sense of rightness and congruence between our internal sense of gender and the way that our gender is embodied, expressed, or perceived. I want to share a couple examples with you of my gender joy. Really, like any time that I am able to tap into a sense of embodiment, I experience gender joy and gender euphoria. It's this sense of rightness and congruence. And so I'll share with you the first time that I experienced this as an adult. It was when I was 24 years old. I'm 37 now, almost 37 now, to give you some sense. And it was the first time that I tried on a binder. For folks who are unfamiliar, a binder is essentially an undergarment that compresses the chest of someone who was assigned female at birth, goes through puberty, but needs a flat chest to feel like themselves. So I got this binder. At the time, I didn't really know what it meant for me and my gender yet. I wasn't really concerned about that. I just knew ever since puberty that part of my body was not right. So I learned about this, this binder, and I knew that I needed to try it. So I ordered it online, and as soon as I got that package, I ran to my room and ripped it open. I put it on and put my t-shirt on over it, and I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and it was like everything just clicked. There was this immense, the heaviest cognitive load that I didn't even know was there was lifted. And all of a sudden I felt like my brain didn't have to work so hard to understand my shape. It was a really powerful experience. To share some more examples, like when I was early on in my transition, I experienced immense gender joy when someone would use my new name and when someone would use my new pronouns. And on the flip of that, I would experience immense dysphoria when they would use the old ones. I have also felt gender joy in fitness and movement spaces with other queer and trans folks, where I have been able to learn how to move my body and be kind to my body in ways that I didn't know how to do before. Some other ones, that are not so directly related to being trans. Before I went bald, I used to have such intense gender joy from different haircuts and different hairstyling that I was able to do. I miss that a lot. That is such a beautiful form of gender joy. Now I get it from my beard sometimes. I also experience it just going swimming in nothing but my swim trunks. That feels so good and so right. Essentially, gender joy is really about this sense of rightness. It's about feeling seen by yourself, or sometimes it's about feeling seen by others. Let's watch this really quick video by Dolly J about gender euphoria.
Someone asked me today, Dolly J, as a cisgender person, can I experience gender euphoria? And the short answer is an emphatic, yes, you can! The person who asked this shared she's a cis woman. She said, can I experience gender euphoria? I love being a girl and I just love seeing myself in makeup and wearing dresses and expressing myself. And her example pretty much sums up what gender euphoria is. Gender euphoria is feeling right in your gender. It is a feeling of joy or happiness in how you are expressing your gender and or being perceived in your gender. And while you'll hear the term a lot more in the trans community when people are talking about what feels right and aligning themselves with their gender, cisgender people have gender too. And gender literacy, like understanding gender euphoria, matters because it's the way that cisgender people will begin to understand trans folks. XO.
So a couple more reflections for you. Number one, I want you to be thinking about, when do you experience gender joy? I feel gender joy when sometimes this is hard for cis folks to tap into who have never thought about this before, and that's okay. Let yourself sit with it, let it take time. Maybe think about something that doesn't feel right, and that might help you figure out what does feel right. And also for cis folks, thinking about this. My gender is affirmed on a daily basis when? Like, how is your gender affirmed on a daily basis that you may not have thought about before? Did anything that I mentioned before when I was talking about gender affirming experiences stand out to you as something like, oh, wow, that happens on a daily basis. I didn't even realize that my gender was being affirmed, but it is. I'll just allow just a quick minute or two in the chat to let folks chime in. And thank you for those of you who were sending kind messages when I was sharing about my gender joy. All right, thank you for sharing. I feel gender joy when, well, I started reading it, but then it got buried by everybody else talking. I will get back to that somehow. Gender joy when I don't have to spend a lot of time getting ready. Yes. Having a beard, yep. When I cut off my hair for the first time, I still felt strong and beautiful. When I wear makeup, when I don't wear makeup. When my kids say, Mom, I love you. Yeah, sometimes those words, which is what we're going to be getting into next, are really gender affirming. Please keep sharing. I'm going to move on just for the sake of time, but please keep sharing. I want to take a look at some language practices that support belonging. Many of our current language practices are steeped in the gender binary. But if we can shift to practices that support belonging, we're going to alleviate this cognitive load for queer and trans folks, and we're going to remove a barrier so that queer and trans folks can more easily access their full potential and thrive in places like school and work and personal lives. I love that I just glanced over and saw an example of somebody feeling gender joy when their husband makes them a meal. I love that. Okay, so language practices that support belonging, number 1 of 3 that I'm going to be sharing, okay? First one, make gender inclusive language your go-to. This is sometimes referred to as gender neutral language, but I feel like gender inclusive is a more accurate term because it demonstrates that these words are words that we can use to include all genders. It's not the absence of gender, but rather for all genders. Okay. What we really want to try to do is to avoid making assumptions based on a person's name, voice, and or appearance, and then preemptively use gender-specific language because that might be wrong. We really need to work hard to not assume someone's identities based on how we perceive them. We're so used to doing that, but we can work on ourselves and work hard in order to disrupt those assumptions. Something to think about, like, are there certain body parts that you always assume belong to one gender? Are there certain voices that you assume always belong to one gender? How about certain experiences, like pregnancy, for example, that you assume always belongs to one gender? Think about those things and think about gender diversity and how you can disentangle the gender binary from your thought process there. Okay, so until you know otherwise, use gender inclusive language. So this means defaulting to using the pronoun they, them. They, them is a great set of pronouns to use when you don't know someone's pronouns yet, because it includes everybody. Honorifics, you can skip them. We can still communicate really respectfully without using words like sir and ma'am, Mr. and miss. Try to use relational terms like parent, sibling, child, partner, when you don't know what someone's identities are. And instead of saying a descriptor like, oh, that woman in the striped shirt over there, you could say that person in the striped shirt or that student in the striped shirt. All right, language practices that support belonging, number 2. Use gender-specific language once you know it. Okay, once you know someone's affirming words, please use them. We're not trying to get rid of gender-specific language. It's really important to use gender-specific language when we know that those are the right words for someone. The issue is when we are assuming and preemptively using them. So whether the words that you learn about someone match up with what you would have guessed or not, using a person's gender-specific and gender-affirming language is one way that we can take those barriers away and not hinder someone from having access to experience gender affirmation. Examples of this are she, he, they. There are lots and lots of sets of gender-affirming pronouns. Some people use more than one set of pronouns. For those of you who might be wondering, well, what do I do when I see someone uses more than one set of pronouns, like she, they, or they, he? All this means is that you should be using all of those sets of pronouns. If it's they, he, for example, that means for this person, you're going to want to use they, them, their pronouns, and you're going to want to use he, him, his pronouns. There is not like an exact or prescribed way of doing this. Some people will alternate from sentence to sentence. Some people will alternate from one time they're talking to or about the person to the next time. All that matters is that you are not just leaning on the set of pronouns that feels most comfortable to you, and that you are putting in effort to use all of their affirming words. Additionally, once you know honorifics, please use them. They can feel really affirming and respectful. Miss, Mr., Mrs. Mix is an honorific that some non-binary people use, but don't just assume that because someone is non-binary, they're going to use that honorific. Relational terms like mom, dad, son, daughter, husband, wife, brother, sister. Someone's comment about feeling gender joy when they hear their kids say, "Mom, I love you." That made me think of this. Sometimes it is so affirming and powerful to have someone use a gendered term about you that really resonates and feels like you and has that congruence and rightness. Okay, language practices that support belonging, number 3. Consider other ways that you can proactively communicate your allyship. So these can be things like sharing your pronouns. And beyond putting them in your email signatures, you should be practicing saying them out loud during introductions. I noticed Britt did that, and I did that here today. Put them next to your name in video calls. I noticed some folks are doing that already. Add them to your work badge. When you share your pronouns, it signals to trans and non-binary folks that you support our right to exist. You believe that we're valuable and that we should be honored and respected. I guess another thing I want to say about that is like when the pronouns that people assume of you match your pronouns because of the way you look and because of the way you sound and act, you're experiencing a privilege. This is a privilege that I experience now too, that I haven't always experienced. But by making an effort to share your pronouns, even though everyone always gets them right, you are slowly helping others dismantle this idea that we can always just look at someone and know who they are. And you're acknowledging that even though that is true about you, it is not true for everyone. And it doesn't make your experience better or more valid. Okay, another thing to consider, try to use up-to-date terminology. For example, using transgender and not transgendered, using pronouns and not preferred pronouns, saying assigned female at birth and not female bodied or biological female or used to be a girl. Those are outdated terms. The accurate up-to-date term is assigned female at birth. I have a whole bunch of terminology on my website if you want to explore more. Also, get trans voices in the tech room. Including trans voices in tech rooms helps create and adapt systems where our perspectives are considered and incorporated, which is going to address bias. Tech, as so many other things, can sometimes perpetuate existing biases and discrimination just by continuing to use systems and ways of doing things that have seemingly worked in the past. But by including trans folks in these spaces, we're going to be able to help you see and address these biases and make sure that you're not unintentionally oppressing trans folks. 2 more, okay? Visually signal your allyship. Ideas for this are like pins, posters, signs, clothes, virtual backdrops, which I see several of today. These are all great ways to visually signal allyship to other queer folks. And lastly, ask LGBTQ plus students and colleagues what they need. I can't emphasize that enough. It is so important to hear from the people in your community what they need. Just by doing these things or starting with one and then getting a little bit more comfortable with it and adding another, you're going to help create and sustain an equitable campus for people of all gender identities and gender expressions. So I have this call to action for you all. I would love it if you can, I'm going to put a link in the chat. You can like pull up your smartphone and use this QR code, or you can go to this link that I just put in the chat. And you can spend a few minutes with it now, or you can have it open and to do right after this or tomorrow morning first thing. But it's just, it's me trying to hold folks accountable. Like, okay, we showed up here, we're just doing this learning. What do I do now? I'm giving you a bunch of ideas of actions you can take. And I'm asking you to be realistic with yourself and check off a few of those that you think, hey, I can start doing this, or maybe I'm already doing it, and what else can I do? There's also opportunity on that form to ask me any questions that were left unanswered after today, as well as providing any feedback that you have. I'm so glad that we have some time for Q&A. I really love seeing how active the chat has been throughout our time together. Thank you so much for being here. I have all of my contact info here for you. All of these slides are going to be sent out to you tomorrow, I believe. So you will have access to the reflections and to my contact info and to some resources as well. So with that, I would love to open the floor and take any questions. Feel free to either put in the chat or unmute yourself.
Hey, Wes, this is Tania.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Thank you for your enlightenment. I really appreciate it. I was just asking, I put in the chat, so I'm a heterosexual female. So I just want to make sure that I use the acronym right. So I was wondering if it would be she, her, and Britt kind of answered that for me, but I just want to make sure that I'm doing that right.
Yeah, as the way to share your pronouns, yes, she, her is, that is just the culturally acceptable way that LGBTQ folks are sharing their pronouns. I feel like I get questions often about, well, like, why can't I just say she or he?
Right.
And there might be someone out there who has more insight on this than me. I'm sure there are people that have more insight on this than me. But from my perspective, it seems as though it really is just a cultural responsiveness and cultural humility practice to use what is the standard within the community, which right now that is like she, her, he, him, they, them, or if there's multiple pronouns, it's using the first, like she, they, or
Okay, thank you. Thank
Okay,
you so much for your lecture. I really loved it. Thank you for enlightening me.
of course. Thank you so much for being here. What other? Yeah.
Yeah, Wes, I just want to say thank you. I let everyone know, and I know people are, probably going to hop into 4 o'clock meetings if you have to go, but I will share slides. Wes shared them with me, so I'll make sure that I share them with you. And I definitely encourage everyone to go to Wes's website. The amount of resources that he has there are just so helpful, but also just, don't know, like really accessible and it doesn't feel too overwhelming. And I know that, Wes, you said so much. Like we could have an entire series for a year just about gender and gender identity and gender expression and those differences, and there's a lot of things there. So yeah, there's a hand up, so I will be quiet. Go ahead, Patricia.
Thank you, Britt, and thank you, Wes, for sharing. I have a question about native traditions. So I'm native. In our tradition, we don't, but they have asked us not to call them LGBTQ and so on. They call themselves Two-Spirit. And we honor that, and we always call them Two-Spirit. We even hold space for them to hold Two-Spirit ceremonies, Two-Spirit spaces, and so on. Right? And when they say it's Two-Spirit, and those of us are not Two-Spirit, we don't cross boundaries. But the question is about, in our traditions, in our languages, there's no gender, because gender, as I think you mentioned, right, it's a social construct, but it's not just a social construct, it's a Western social construct. So by asking our communities to say their pronouns, I feel that is like we're putting a Band-Aid on a big thing. I would say, from my perspective, I would say, again, there's no gender in our communities. And even in some languages, maybe Lakota, there's like 5, if we can call them genders, but that is too, is narrowing down a lot. So again, we don't have that concept. And that's why, for me, I'm very hesitant to add my pronouns, because for me, it's like, I'm kind of betraying my own culture. So I'm asking to betray my culture so that I can support others. But in my culture, we don't even have genders. So it's like, it's like, again, like putting a Band-Aid on something that is not correct from the beginning, because gender was assigned for white patriarchy, white supremacy, so that they can other women, right? Because they were not men. And then they decided, okay, men are here, women are here, and men are the ones that get all the support, and women don't. But we don't have that. I mean, there's no white supremacy, or at least we didn't start with those concepts, right? So I'm wondering how do you reconcile? I guess, I don't know. I also wonder, you have been in contact with Two-Spirit communities and how they live, their Two-Spirit beings.
Yeah.
And thank you again.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And all of that is extremely valid. And something I didn't mention is that although I do, broadly speaking, advocate for folks to share their pronouns, I also think it's equally important, and so I should have said that it never should be a requirement. I don't believe it should be required upon anyone to share pronouns, because there are many different reasons, yours being one of them, that someone might have no need to, no interest, no desire to do that practice. That being said, I'm wondering about, because at the heart of it, at the core of it, for me, is like, when I see someone sharing their pronouns, for me, it helps me to feel like they're an ally, or that they believe that trans people are valid. And so that's not the only way that can be communicated. Like, I'm wondering if there are other ways communicate that. It doesn't need to be through sharing pronouns. And I really appreciate you. I know a little bit about Two-Spirit community, but I didn't know everything that you shared. So I really appreciate that learning that I just did. And I follow a few Two-Spirit people on Instagram. Beyond that, I still have a lot to learn. So I really, really appreciate you bringing that to the table. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Well, I think we are at time. Wes has shared his information, so if you want to reach out, I know he will continue to answer questions because he's just that wonderful. So thank you so much, Wes, for being here. And everyone else, I really hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Juneteenth. And we will be in touch. I will make sure I share these slides. Thank you again. It means a lot for everyone who came today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, go ahead, Wes. Sorry.
I was just gonna, thank you, Britt and Berkeley IT for bringing me in, and thank you for everyone who showed up today. It really means a lot to me to engage in this with you. So thank you.
And a huge shout out to our ASL interpreters. Thank you so much, as always. Very, very appreciative.
Thank you.
Have a good day, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.